Imagine for a moment a world where millions of men across Western society suddenly awaken to a profound realization that changes everything about how they view relationships, dating, and their role in society. This awakening is not born out of anger alone, but from years of observation, experience, and a clear eyed assessment of the dynamics that have shaped modern interactions between men and women. What happens when these men decide that the traditional expectations placed upon them no longer align with reality and they choose to step back entirely? Stay with me until the very end, because by the conclusion of this discussion, you will see not only why this shift is happening on a massive scale, but also the irreversible consequences that are unfolding right now in 2026, consequences that could reshape society in ways few people truly anticipated. If you appreciate this kind of direct, no nonsense breakdown of what is really going on in the world today, then do me a favor and hit that like button, share this video with others who need to hear it, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to click the notification bell and select all so you get every single video the moment we release it. That way, you never miss out on more great angry guy content that cuts through the noise and gets straight to the truth. Also, if you are serious about taking control of your financial future in these uncertain times, check out Angry's Crypto Academy, where you can learn how to properly protect and safeguard your assets and grow your wealth through understanding how to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency the right way. The Academy is linked right in the description of this video, so pause for a second and go check it out now. It could be one of the best decisions you make this year. And if you're enjoying these angry guy videos and want to show some direct support for the work we put in here, you can buy me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It helps keep the energy high and the content coming, and I genuinely appreciate every single one of you who does that. Now, let us dive deep into this topic that has been building for years and is now reaching a tipping point that no one can ignore any longer. The core realization that millions of men have come to is straightforward yet profoundly impactful. In Western society, a significant portion of women have historically viewed men not as true equal partners in life, but more as providers of resources, attention, and security, essentially as servants expected to fulfill certain roles without genuine reciprocity. This is not about painting all women with the same brush, because there are always exceptions, but we are talking about broad patterns that have emerged over decades, patterns reinforced by cultural messages, social media trends, and shifting societal norms. Men were conditioned to believe that providing endlessly, protecting without question, and giving their time, energy, and finances was the essence of love and partnership. But after repeated experiences of being taken for granted, used for convenience, and discarded when no longer needed, men started to question this narrative. They began to see that what was sold to them as mutual love was often one sided utilization. And once that veil was lifted, there was no going back. Consider the countless stories we see playing out every day on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, where women who once proudly declared their independence, stating loudly that they did not need men, that the world would be better without certain male influences, and that they could handle everything on their own, are now appearing in videos visibly distraught. These same women are crying into their cameras, explaining how the boss babe lifestyle has become unsustainable, how inflation and rising costs have made it impossible to afford basic housing or even groceries without struggle. They complain that men are no longer approaching them in public, no longer asking them out on dates, no longer offering to pay for meals or provide the attention they once took for granted. The recurring question echoes through these videos: where have all the good men gone? It is a question laced with confusion and frustration, because from their perspective, men have simply vanished from the dating landscape. But the reality is far different. Those men did not vanish. They listened. They internalized The messages that were broadcast far and wide, messages that men were not needed, that traditional roles were outdated and oppressive, that women could thrive entirely on their own with the support of careers, government programs, and female solidarity. And so men responded in the most logical way possible. They walked away. This walking away is not a tantrum or a petty revenge plot. It is a rational decision made by millions of men who have grown tired of participating in a system that offers them little benefit and significant risk. For years, men were encouraged to step up, to be providers and protectors, to invest their resources into relationships under the assumption that it would be reciprocated with loyalty, respect, and genuine partnership. But what many discovered through personal experience, through observing friends and family, and through the endless stream of online content showcasing these dynamics was that this investment was often not returned. Women, influenced by cultural shifts toward hyper independence, began to view traditional male contributions not as valuable partnerships, but as entitlements or even as tools to be used when convenient. Dates became a way to secure free meals without intention of deeper connection. Friendships with men often translated into emotional support and financial assistance without boundaries. And when men expressed needs or boundaries of their own, they were frequently labeled as inadequate or toxic. Over time, this imbalance became impossible to ignore. Men realized that they were being positioned as servants rather than partners, expected to serve without question while receiving conditional affection at best. As this realization spread, fueled by open discussions in online communities, podcasts, and video content that highlighted these patterns without apology, men began to prioritize themselves in ways they never had before. They focused on building their own wealth, improving their physical and mental health, pursuing hobbies and careers that brought personal fulfillment, and creating networks of male friendships that offered real support without drama. The result? A growing number of men reporting higher levels of peace, contentment, and overall life satisfaction than ever before. They are thriving in ways that do not depend on female approval or participation in traditional relationship structures. Gym memberships among men have surged. Personal development content tailored to male audiences has exploded in popularity, and more men are choosing solitary activities or travel that enriches their lives directly. Meanwhile, the women who once dismissed the need for men are now facing the practical consequences of that stance. With economic pressures mounting, government support systems strained to their limits, and the traditional fallback option of relying on a male partner no longer readily available, many are finding themselves in precarious positions. Let us tell this as a story that has been repeating itself in countless variations across cities, towns, and countries throughout the Western world. Picture a typical young man in his 20s or 30s, working hard at his job, saving what he can, and entering the dating scene with optimism. He meets a woman who seems interested, and he follows the script he was taught. Plan nice dates, pay for everything, offer compliments and attention, be the reliable one who listens and supports. At first, it feels rewarding, but over time, patterns emerge, the dates continue, but the deeper commitment does not. She talks about her independence, how she does not need a man to complete her, how her friends and career are enough. Yet, she accepts the meals, the gifts, the rides, the emotional labor without hesitation. When he suggests something reciprocal, or when he sets a boundary, suddenly he's too needy, too controlling, or not exciting enough. Eventually, the relationship fizzles, or worse, ends in a way that leaves him financially and emotionally drained. He watches as she moves on quickly, often to someone who offers less stability but more thrill. And he hears the cultural messages reinforcing that men like him are the problem, that they need to do more, be better, provide even when it is not appreciated. Now, multiply this story by millions. Men sharing these experiences, warning each other, learning from each other's mistakes. They see the statistics on divorce outcomes, where men often lose significant assets and access to children. They observe the public shaming of men who complain, while women's grievances are amplified. They notice how social media celebrates female independence while mocking male vulnerability. And gradually the decision crystallizes. Why participate? Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Why risk everything for a dynamic that history and current trends show is stacked against long term mutual benefit? Instead, these men choose freedom. They invest in themselves. They build businesses, travel to places where interactions feel more balanced, or simply enjoy the peace of not having to constantly prove their worth. This is the heart of the Men Walking Away movement, a quiet but powerful shift where men reclaim their time, energy, and resources for their own purposes. On the other side of this equation, we see the panic beginning to set in among women who built their lives around the assumption that men would always be there as a safety net. The state interventions and corporate opportunities that were supposed to replace traditional structures are proving insufficient in the face of real economic challenges. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Housing costs soar beyond reach for single incomes, and the social safety nets that were expanded in previous decades are now under immense strain, with no quick fixes in sight. Women who traded direct male provision for indirect state support are discovering that the state cannot provide the personal attention, protection, or companionship that human relationships offer. And with men no longer stepping in to fill those gaps willingly, the reality hits hard. Videos of women expressing bewilderment at the lack of approaches, the absence of chivalrous gestures, the reluctance of men to invest without clear reciprocity, these are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a larger societal recalibration. To understand why this recalibration feels so sudden, though it has been building for years, we need to look at the messaging that dominated the cultural landscape in the 2010s and early 2020s. Phrases like, the future is female, men are trash, I don't need a man, and celebrations of single life as the ultimate empowerment were everywhere. Mainstream media, influencers, music, and even educational materials pushed the idea that traditional gender roles were harmful relics and that women could and should do everything independently. Men were told to step back, to dismantle their privileges, to make space. And many men did exactly that. They stepped back, but not just from privilege, from the entire arena. If women truly did not need men, then men would no longer offer themselves up as options. It was a logical conclusion to the premises presented. Yet now, as the practical limitations of total independence become undeniable, the narrative is shifting again. Complaints about male scarcity, about the dating pool shrinking to a puddle, about good men hiding or disappearing altogether. Women asking where the men are hanging out, why they are not approaching, why they seem content without relationships. The irony is palpable because the men are everywhere, living their lives, focusing on what brings them joy and stability. They are at the gym, building stronger bodies and minds. They are advancing in their careers, securing financial independence. They are traveling, experiencing new cultures where mutual respect in relationships is still valued. They are simply no longer chasing, no longer simping, no longer subsidizing lifestyles that reject their contributions outright. This shift has profound implications that extend beyond individual dating lives. It affects birth rates, family formation, economic productivity, and even political landscapes. When large numbers of men opt out of traditional marriage and fatherhood, societies that rely on those structures for continuity begin to feel the strain. Women who planned on having children later, assuming partners would be available when ready, are confronting timelines that do not wait. Men who once would have sacrificed personal goals for family are now achieving those goals unencumbered. The balance of power in interpersonal dynamics has tilted, with men holding leverage through their willingness to walk away entirely. Let me share another layer of the story through the lens of specific examples that illustrate the broader trend. Take the phenomenon of women in their 30s and 40s re entering the dating market after prioritizing careers or previous relationships that did not last. Many express shock at how the landscape has changed, where once they had abundant options, now matches are sparse, and the men they do encounter are often direct about expectations or quick to disengage if effort is not mutual. These men have learned from the red pill communities, from personal hardships, that investing heavily upfront without reciprocity is a losing proposition. They no longer tolerate games, mixed signals, or entitlement. Instead, they screen carefully or avoid altogether. Meanwhile, younger women echoing the independence mantra are setting themselves up for similar realizations down the line unless the cultural script changes dramatically. We can also look at the reactions within female communities themselves. There are growing discussions where women turn on each other over the independence narrative. Some blame radical feminism for scaring men away, for making normal interactions fraught with risk of accusation. Others admit that the constant messaging of not needing men has backfired, leaving many feeling isolated when reality sets in. These internal conflicts highlight the unsustainability of the previous approach. When even women start questioning the dogma that pushed men to the sidelines, it signals a potential turning point. But for men, the turning point has already arrived. The decision to walk away is not reversible for most because the peace and self respect gained are too valuable to trade back for uncertainty. Men are reporting higher happiness in solitude or in carefully chosen friendships than in the relationships they left behind. They are done being the default providers without partnership, done being the emotional dumping ground without support in return, done risking everything for outcomes that statistics show favor women disproportionately in breakups and legal proceedings. As we continue this exploration, consider the historical parallels. Societies that devalue one gender's contributions eventually face corrections, sometimes gentle, sometimes abrupt. In this case, the correction is coming through millions of individual choices adding up to a collective movement. Until men walking away is not about hatred or punishment. It is about self preservation and alignment with reality. And as long as the underlying dynamics remain unaddressed, this movement will only grow stronger. The story of this societal shift did not happen overnight, but rather through a slow accumulation of experiences that eventually reached a breaking point for millions of men simultaneously. Think about how information spreads in the modern age, with forums, video channels, and social media threads and podcasts dedicated to men's issues gaining massive audiences year after year. Men who felt isolated in their frustrations suddenly discovered that they were far from alone, that the patterns they observed in their own lives were being echoed by countless others across different countries, backgrounds, and age groups. This collective awakening created a feedback loop where each shared story reinforced the decision to prioritize self interest over traditional obligations. No longer were men willing to accept the narrative that their primary value lay in what they could provide to women or to society at large without genuine appreciation or mutual benefit. Instead, they began to ask fundamental questions. Or what do I actually gain from investing heavily in a relationship where my efforts are expected but not truly valued? What risks am I taking by committing resources, time, and emotional energy in a landscape where outcomes often favor the other party in breakups or disputes? And most importantly, is the peace and autonomy of walking away worth more than the potential rewards of staying engaged? For an ever growing number of men, the answer became a resounding yes. Let us expand on the economic side of this equation, because money and resources have always been at the core of these dynamics, even if rarely discussed openly in polite conversation. Throughout history, men have been positioned as the primary providers, expected to earn, build, and sustain households while women manage domestic spheres. This division of labor made sense in earlier eras when physical strength and external risk taking were necessary for survival. But in the modern Western world, with technology, office jobs, and social safety nets, that necessity diminished dramatically. Yet the cultural expectation lingered, evolving into a one sided demand where men were still required to provide financially, while women gained the option to contribute or not based on preference. Dates became expected to be paid for by men, even in early stages with no commitment. Living expenses were often shared unevenly under the guise of equality, with men covering larger portions quietly. Gifts, trips, and support during tough times flowed predominantly in one direction. And when relationships ended, men frequently walked away with significant financial losses, from divided assets to ongoing support payments. All of this while being told that expecting reciprocity was outdated or entitled. When men began to calculate the cost benefit ratio honestly, without the rose colored glasses of societal programming, the conclusion was clear. The investment was high risk with low guaranteed returns. Walking away preserved their earnings, their future wealth building potential, and their financial independence. Now, as we move into 2026, we see the real world fallout of this recalibration playing out in everyday life. Single women in urban areas are reporting increased difficulty in maintaining the lifestyles they became accustomed to during periods when male attention and resources were abundant. Rent prices continue to climb, groceries strain budgets, and discretionary spending on travel, dining out, or personal care becomes a luxury rather than a norm. Many women who embrace the empowered independent narrative now find themselves working longer hours, taking on side jobs, or cutting back significantly just to cover basics. The freedom they celebrated comes with the full weight of responsibility that was once shared or offset by male contributions, and without the fallback of easily attracting a partner willing to subsidize or share burdens, the pressure mounts. This is not to diminish women's capabilities or achievements, far from it. Many women thrive independently through hard work and smart decisions. But the broader trend shows that the cultural push toward total self sufficiency without male involvement overlooked the practical realities for the average person facing economic headwinds. The state cannot replace the granular, personal support that relationships provide. And with men opting out, the gap becomes glaring. Consider the dating applications and how they reflect the shift in real time. Where once men swiped right enthusiastically, messaged first, planned elaborate first meetings, and invested effort into standing out, now the dynamic has flipped. Men on these platforms are far more selective, often requiring clear signs of mutual interest before committing time or money. Many have reduced their usage altogether, finding the endless cycle of mismatched expectations exhausting and unrewarding. Women, in turn, report receiving fewer quality matches, fewer initiated conversations, and fewer offers for proper dates. The complaints pour into online forums and video content. Men only want casual arrangements, or men ghost after minimal interaction, or men seem uninterested in commitment. But from the male perspective, these behaviors are protective measures. Why invest deeply when experience shows it may lead to one sided effort or abrupt dismissal? Why plan expensive outings when the cultural message has been that such gestures are expected without gratitude? The apps become a microcosm of the larger society where men's withdrawal creates scarcity that alters the power balance entirely. Another layer to this story involves the workplace and career trajectories. Men who previously might have sacrificed personal advancement for family stability, taking safer jobs, or working overtime to provide, are now channeling that energy into their own growth. Promotions, side businesses, skill development, and networking take priority when there is no external pressure to prioritize a partner's comfort over personal ambition. This focus leads to higher earnings potential, greater job satisfaction, and a sense of accomplishment that is self derived rather than tied to external validation. Men report feeling more motivated when the fruits of their labor benefit themselves directly, without the dilution of supporting lifestyles or expectations that do not align with their values. This professional thriving contrasts sharply with the struggles many women face in balancing career demands with the desire for family or personal time, especially when potential partners are not stepping in to share loads traditionally. The result is a widening gap in life satisfaction reports between single men and single women in certain demographics, a gap that studies and surveys are only beginning to capture fully. Let us tell the tale through the eyes of a composite character representing thousands of real men out there today. Meet Alex, a 35-year-old professional living in a major city. 10 years ago, Alex was the quintessential nice guy, believing wholeheartedly in the fairy tale of finding the right woman, settling down, and building a life together. He dated actively, paid for dinners, planned thoughtful surprises, listened patiently to emotional concerns, and always aimed to be the reliable partner. But relationship after relationship followed a similar arc: initial excitement, gradual one sidedness, and eventual endings where he felt depleted while his partners moved on, seemingly unscathed. Friends shared parallel stories, warning him about patterns, but he persisted, thinking his effort would eventually pay off. Then came the cultural saturation of independence messaging, where women he dated openly stated they did not need a man, yet continued to accept his provisions without matching investment. The turning point arrived after a particularly draining breakup where he lost time, money, and emotional bandwidth for someone who later posted about not needing anyone. Alex paused, reflected, and discovered online community discussing these exact dynamics. He learned terms like hypergamy, the dual mating strategy, and the risks of modern marriage. More importantly, he heard from men who had walked away and found peace. So Alex made the choice. He deleted the dating apps, hit the gym consistently, advanced in his career aggressively, saved and invested wisely, and built a circle of like minded friends. Today, Alex travels internationally several times a year, owns property outright, enjoys hobbies he once set aside, and reports a level of contentment he never knew in relationships. He's not bitter, not angry in a destructive way, simply done participating in a game he sees as unfairly structured. Multiply Alex by millions, and you have the backbone of the men walking away phenomenon. These are not dysfunctional men hiding in basements. These are functional, productive, often high achieving individuals who have redirected their considerable capabilities inward and toward male networks. They contribute to society through work, taxes, innovation, and community in ways that suit them, without the added layer of personal relationship obligations. And in doing so, they expose the fragility of a system that relied on their unreciprocated investment to function smoothly. Women who planned life timelines around eventual male partnership are adjusting expectations downward, some choosing child free lives, others pursuing alternative paths like sperm donation or co parenting arrangements that minimize male involvement. But these alternatives come with their own challenges and do not replicate the organic partnership once assumed to be always available. The media response to this shift has been revealing as well. Mainstream outlets cycle through explanations that avoid the core issue: male disengagement as a rational response to incentives. Instead, they propose theories like prolonged adolescence, economic anxiety keeping men immature, or video games and pornography replacing real relationships. These narratives attempt to pathologize men's choices rather than acknowledge the legitimacy of their grievances. Yet, independent creators, podcasters, and commentators who address the dynamics head on continue to grow and reach, providing the unfiltered analysis that resonates with lived experience. This divide in information sources further solidifies men's resolve as they see attempts to shame or dismiss their decisions as confirmation of the original problem. Looking forward from January 2026, the trajectory appears set for a continued expansion of this movement. Younger generations of men raised entirely in this cultural environment enter adulthood already skeptical of traditional relationship models. They observe older brothers, uncles, and fathers who followed the old script and emerged disadvantaged. They consume content from a young age, highlighting risks and promoting self reliance. As a result, the opt out rate accelerates, creating a self reinforcing cycle where female scarcity complaints grow louder, prompting even more men to disengage. Policy responses may emerge from incentives for family formation to public campaigns encouraging male participation. But without addressing root causes around reciprocity, respect, and balanced incentives, such efforts are likely to fall flat. Men have tasted the freedom of self prioritization and are unlikely to return to previous norms without substantial cultural evolution. This evolution would require honest conversations across divides, acknowledging that both genders have valid perspectives shaped by different pressures. Women facing genuine hardships in the current economy deserve empathy and solutions that empower rather than depend on unwilling participants. Men seeking mutual respect and fair exchange in relationships deserve spaces where those desires are not mocked or vilified. But until those conversations occur widely and sincerely, the walking away continues, reshaping demographics, economies, and social structures in profound ways. As we reflect on these developments, it becomes clear that the abandonment of traditional relationships by men is not a temporary trend, but a fundamental reorientation. Men have figured out that servitude disguised as love offers little long term benefit, and they have chosen a different path. Women, having advocated for independence, are now living its full implications. The state, strained beyond capacity, cannot fill the void, and society at large must grapple with the consequences of messaging that, when taken to its logical conclusion, led to this exact outcome. The good men did not disappear. They simply stopped serving without partnership. They are thriving independently, building lives on their own terms, and redefining what masculinity means in the modern era. The ripple effects of this mass male disengagement extend far beyond untold individual dating lives and personal finances, touching every corner of society in ways that are only now becoming fully visible as we progress through 2026. Family courts, once overwhelmed with cases where men fought to maintain connections and financial responsibilities, are seeing a noticeable decline in new marriage related filings, not because conflicts have vanished, but because fewer men are entering into legal unions in the first place. Marriage rates across Western countries continue to plummet, hitting historic lows that demographers struggle to explain through traditional economic lenses alone. Birth rates follow suit, dipping into territory that triggers alarm bells among policymakers who rely on population growth for long term economic stability and pension system sustainability. Governments that once expanded social programs, assuming a steady base of dual income or male supported households, now face budget shortfalls as fewer young people form those households. The tax base shrinks incrementally. Public services strain further, and the cycle reinforces itself. Women who delayed childbirth, assuming partners would materialize when biologically convenient, discover that the window narrows faster than cultural narratives admitted. Fertility clinics report surges in single women seeking assistance, while adoption agencies note shifts in applicant demographics. All of these changes trace back to the same root: millions of men deciding that the traditional path offers insufficient rewards compared to the autonomy of going their own way. Let us explore the psychological dimension of this transformation, because the internal shift within men is just as significant as the external behaviors. For decades, men were socialized to derive much of their self worth from their ability to provide, protect, and attract female partnership. Success was measured in large part by securing a loyal wife, building a family, and being seen as a reliable pillar. When those efforts repeatedly led to exploitation, dismissal, or disadvantage, a profound cognitive dissonance emerged. Men felt the weight of expectation without the corresponding validation or security. Therapy sessions, once rare for men, increased as individuals processed grief over lost investments of time and heart. But alongside that processing came clarity. Many men emerged from this period not broken, but liberated. They redefined purpose around internal metrics: personal health, financial freedom, skill mastery, meaningful friendships, and contributions to causes they chose freely. The absence of constant negotiation, drama, or one sided emotional labor created mental space previously unimaginable. Reports of reduced anxiety, better sleep, higher motivation, and genuine life enjoyment flood men's forums and content spaces. This psychological thriving stands in stark contrast to the rising rates of loneliness and dissatisfaction expressed by women in similar age brackets who find the independence they championed harder to endure in practice than in theory. Picture the daily life of a man who has fully embraced this path. He wakes up without the pressure of planning around someone else's schedule or moods. His mornings belong to him, perhaps a workout, a quiet breakfast, focused work without distractions from relationship conflicts. Evenings offer flexibility, meeting friends for activities, pursuing side projects, traveling on short notice, or simply relaxing without justification. Finances accumulate faster without subsidizing dual lifestyles or unexpected expenses tied to partnership demands. Decisions about where to live, how to spend free time, what risks to take professionally, all flow from his own priorities. There is no second guessing whether efforts will be appreciated, no walking on eggshells to avoid misinterpretation, no slow drain of energy from unbalanced dynamics. This life is not one of isolation for most, far from it. Men build stronger bonds with other men through shared interests, sports leagues, professional networks, outdoor adventures, and collaborative ventures. Brotherhood becomes a chosen family, reliable and reciprocal in ways that romantic pursuits often were not. And when interactions with women do occur, they happen on equal footing, with clear boundaries and mutual respect required from the start. No longer do these men chase validation through provision. They offer partnership only when it enhances their already fulfilling existence. Contrast this with the emerging narratives from women navigating the new reality. Online content multiplies, featuring women in their late 20s through 40s expressing bewilderment and regret over life choices influenced by the empowerment messaging of previous years. They speak of exhausting work weeks, leaving no energy for socializing, of dating fatigue where matches fizzle quickly, of financial stress eroding joy in once enjoyed activities. Some openly question whether the trade off was worth it, whether declaring independence so forcefully created the very scarcity they now lament. Others double down, insisting men must change, must step up again, must restore traditional gestures without demanding reciprocity. But these calls largely fall on deaf ears because men have heard similar pleas before, only to see them evaporate once security was reestablished. Trust, once eroded on a societal scale, rebuilds slowly, if at all. The women who adapt by softening rhetoric, offering genuine partnership, and demonstrating mutual investment do find connections, but they are the exception proving the rule. Most discover that the cultural momentum they help propel now carries consequences they cannot unilaterally reverse. Institutions that once benefited from male participation feel the pinch as well. Universities note declining male enrollment in certain fields. As young men question the value of degrees leading to careers that might subsidize unbalanced lifestyles. Military recruitment struggles with motivation when family formation incentives lose appeal. Volunteer organizations, community groups, and even religious congregations report shifts in male involvement, with men choosing activities that align directly with personal growth or male camaraderie over mixed gender obligations. The cumulative effect is a society slowly reorienting around different incentives, where male energy flows toward self sustaining channels rather than traditional support structures. From a broader historical perspective, this moment represents a rare societal pivot point where one gender's collective behavior shifts dramatically in response to perceived inequities. Past movements focused on expanding women's options and freedoms, which brought undeniable progress in education, workplace participation, legal rights, and personal autonomy. But an unintended side effect was the devaluation of male roles without replacing them with new, mutually beneficial frameworks. When men were told their traditional contributions were problematic, yet still expected to provide them, the contradiction became unsustainable. The current withdrawal is the correction phase, where men align actions with the reality presented to them. If women truly can thrive independently with state and corporate support, then male provision becomes optional rather than obligatory. And men, exercising the same agency celebrated in women's choices, opt out en masse. Looking at international comparisons sharpens the picture. In regions where cultural norms still emphasize mutual gender roles, balanced reciprocity, and family centric values, relationship formation remains robust. Men there report higher willingness to invest because expectations align more closely with outcomes. Western men observe these differences through travel, online connections, and expatriate communities, often choosing to relocate or seek partners abroad where dynamics feel less adversarial. Passport bro trends accelerate, with men building lives in places offering warmer interpersonal climates. This mobility further reduces the domestic pool, intensifying the scarcity felt back home. Policy discussions begin to emerge in think tanks and government circles, grappling with declining demographics and shifting gender dynamics. Proposals range from family incentives to educational reforms aimed at restoring balance. Some suggest cultural campaigns promoting mutual respect and partnership over independence absolutism. Others explore economic supports that reduce pressure on single individuals regardless of gender, but implementation lags behind the speed of individual choices. Men continue walking away faster than systems can adapt, creating a lag that amplifies consequences. Within female communities, fractures deepen. Younger women receive mixed messages from elders who lived the boss babe era versus peers witnessing current realities. Some mentors warn against repeating patterns, advocating for earlier partnership focus and reciprocal attitudes. Others maintain the independence line, framing male withdrawal as immaturity or failure to adapt. These debates spill into public view through podcasts, articles, and social media clashes, highlighting the absence of consensus on moving forward. Without unified direction, individual women navigate the landscape as best they can, some succeeding through adaptation, others struggling against the tide. For men, the path forward crystallizes with increasing clarity. Communities dedicated to self improvement, financial education, physical fitness, and purposeful living expand rapidly. Content creators teaching skills like investing, entrepreneurship, health optimization, and boundary setting gain massive followings. Men support each other in building lives of abundance that do not require female participation to feel complete. The message resonates. You are enough as you are. Your value is inherent, not derived from service to others. This empowerment mirrors the female empowerment narrative of prior decades, but applies the same principles inward for men. As 2026 unfolds, evidence mounts that this shift is not temporary. Longitudinal surveys tracking happiness, financial security, and life satisfaction show single men in their 30s and 40s outperforming coupled counterparts in multiple metrics for the first time in recorded data. Women in similar categories report opposite trends, with gaps widening yearly. Mental health professionals note changing client demographics, with fewer men seeking help for relationship based issues and more women processing isolation and regret. Economists model future scenarios where continued trends lead to profound societal restructuring, potentially requiring entirely new social contracts. The story we are living through is one of cause and effect playing out on a grand scale. Messages broadcast widely were received and acted upon literally. Declarations of not needing men prompted men to cease offering themselves unconditionally. Celebrations of independence removed the incentive for male investment. And now, the full implications unfold in real time. Men have not abandoned women out of spite, but out of rational alignment with observed reality. They have chosen peace over performance, autonomy over obligation, self respect over servitude. And in doing so, they have exposed the limits of a system built on unreciprocated expectations. This rebalancing carries no predetermined endpoint. Society may evolve toward new equilibria where mutual partnership regains appeal through genuine reciprocity, or the trends may solidify, with parallel lives becoming the norm and traditional structures fading further. What remains certain is that the old model, reliant on male servitude disguised as love, has reached its conclusion. Men figured out in it yet the dynamic, internalized the lessons, and walked away in numbers too large to ignore. The world adjusts accordingly, one individual choice at a time. The narrative of men walking away continues to unfold with layers of complexity that reveal themselves when we examine the interpersonal stories behind the statistics and trends. Consider the countless private conversations happening in homes, workplaces, and online spaces where men confide in one another about their decisions to step back from the dating and relationship market entirely. These are not proclamations shouted from rooftops, but quiet, resolute choices made after years of weighing evidence from personal experience and broader observation. A man might sit with his closest friends over a meal and explain that he has decided to focus exclusively on his career, his health, and his personal passions for the foreseeable future. His friends nod in understanding because they have either made the same choice or are seriously contemplating it. There is no celebration of loneliness in these moments, rather, a profound sense of relief that comes from no longer carrying the weight of expectations that were never truly reciprocated. These men speak of finally feeling in control of their own lives, of waking up each day with energy directed toward goals that benefit them directly rather than hoping their efforts will earn appreciation from someone else. This sense of agency becomes addictive in the best way, reinforcing the decision day after day as they witness tangible progress in their physical fitness, financial portfolios, professional advancements, and overall peace of mind. On the other side of this divide, women who once felt empowered by the cultural narrative of complete independence now grapple with the day to day realities that narrative glossed over. Many express a growing fatigue from shouldering every responsibility alone while still facing societal pressures around family, aging, and legacy. The vision sold to them was one of boundless freedom, endless options, and fulfillment through career and self expression alone. Yet as the years pass, the absence of meaningful partnership reveals itself not as liberation, but as a different kind of burden. Social circles that once revolved around shared dating stories and female solidarity now shift toward discussions of loneliness, financial strain, and uncertainty about the future. Some women articulate a sense of betrayal, not necessarily by men, but by the broader cultural messaging that assured them male participation would always be available when needed. They look around and see fewer men willing to invest the time, resources, and emotional energy that once smoothed the edges of independent life. The realization dawns that the safety net they assumed would catch them was woven partially from male willingness to provide, and that thread has been pulled away by millions of individual choices. This dynamic plays out vividly in urban centers where the cost of living amplifies every decision. Women working a professional job might earn a solid income by historical standards, yet find that after rent, student loans, health insurance, and basic necessities, there is little left for savings or enjoyment. In previous decades, partnership often meant combining resources, sharing expenses, and creating a buffer against economic uncertainty. Now, with men increasingly reluctant to merge finances or subsidize lifestyles early in relationships, that buffer disappears for many. The result is a heightened sense of precarity that seeps into mental health, sleep patterns, and long term planning. Women post videos and write articles detailing the exhaustion of constantly hustling without the occasional relief that came from shared burdens. They describe dating experiences where men are polite but guarded, willing to meet for low cost activities but quick to withdraw if expectations of provision arise. The frustration builds because the old scripts no longer work, yet new ones have not fully emerged to replace them. Meanwhile, men who have embraced the walking away philosophy continue to report unprecedented levels of personal fulfillment. They describe lives filled with purposeful activity rather than performative effort. Weekends, once spent trying to impress dates or manage relationship dynamics, now belong to adventures, learning new skills, or deepening existing friendships. Many invest in experiences that build lasting memories. International travel to countries where cultural norms feel more balanced, attending workshops and retreats focused on male development, starting businesses that align with personal passions. The financial benefits compound quickly when resources are not diverted toward dating expenses, gifts, or supporting partners. Savings rates climb, investment accounts grow, debt disappears faster, and the sense of security that comes from self reliance becomes its own reward. These men often express gratitude for the wake up call that pushed them to this path, viewing past relationship struggles as necessary lessons that led to current freedom. Let us delve deeper into the role of technology and social media in accelerating this shift. Platforms that once showcased curated images of perfect coupledom now host raw confessions from both sides. Women share tearful monologues about the disappearance of chivalry, the lack of initiative from men, the difficulty of finding someone willing to commit. Men in their own spaces counter with detailed breakdowns of why they disengaged, citing specific experiences of being used financially or emotionally, of facing false accusations, of watching resources vanish in breakups. Algorithms feed each side content that reinforces their perspective, creating echo chambers that solidify positions. Yet, this same technology also facilitates the spread of alternative lifestyles. Men discover communities teaching financial independence, fitness regimens, mindset shifts, and strategies for building meaningful lives without traditional relationships. The sheer volume of positive testimonials from men thriving solo or in male centric networks drowns out attempts to shame them back into participation. Social media becomes both the battlefield where grievances are aired and the classroom where new ways of living are taught and learned. The workplace provides another arena where these changes manifest clearly. Companies that once relied on male employees working extensive overtime to support families now compete for talent that prioritizes work life balance above all else. Men negotiate harder for remote options, flexible hours, and compensation that reflects their full value, knowing they have no external dependence relying on their income. Productivity in focused bursts often increases when personal drama decreases, benefiting employers in unexpected ways. At the same time, women navigating career ladders express growing concern about the biological clock conflicting with professional demands, especially without partners willing to share parenting responsibilities early. Maternity leave policies and childcare costs hit harder when shouldered alone. The conversation around work life integration evolves as both genders confront different pressures shaped by the new relational landscape. Educational institutions feel the shift as well. Young men entering college or trade programs increasingly choose paths based on personal interest and earning potential rather than preparing to be primary providers. Fields like engineering, technology, trades, and entrepreneurship draw strong male enrollment because they promise direct rewards without requiring relationship compromise. Conversely, some traditionally female dominated fields see continued growth, but with questions arising about long term sustainability when partnership rates decline. Guidance counselors report more male students expressing skepticism about marriage and family formation, citing observed outcomes from parents' generations or online research. The transmission of cultural expectations breaks down as new generations reject inherited scripts in favor of self determined futures. Family dynamics across generations reveal tension and adaptation. Parents who followed traditional paths sometimes struggle to understand sons who opt out entirely. Conversations at holiday gatherings turn awkward when grandparents ask about grandchildren and receive responses about focusing on personal goals instead. Yet many parents, especially fathers who experience divorce or financial disadvantage, quietly support their son's caution. Mothers may express worry about loneliness, but increasingly acknowledge the validity of protecting peace of mind. Siblings compare notes, with brothers often aligning on self prioritization, while sisters navigate the changed dating terrain. These family discussions become microcosms of the larger societal negotiation, where old assumptions collide with new realities. Health outcomes provide measurable evidence of the shift's impact. Men report lower stress markers, reduced cortisol levels, better cardiovascular health from consistent exercise, and fewer mental health crises tied to relationship turmoil. Gyms and fitness centers note sustained male attendance growth that began years ago and shows no sign of slowing. Mental health professionals working with men describe clients focused on optimization rather than recovery from relational trauma. Women, by contrast, show rising indicators of stress related conditions, sleep disorders, and anxiety linked to economic pressure and social isolation. Medical waiting rooms reflect these trends as different demographics seek care for different underlying causes. Entrepreneurship flourishes among men who redirect energy previously spent on relationships toward business creation. Startups founded by single men in their 30s and 40s proliferate in sectors like technology, content creation, real estate, and e commerce. The absence of family obligations allows risk taking that coupled counterparts might avoid. Venture networks form around shared values of independence and self reliance, funding projects that align with male centric priorities. This economic activity generates wealth that circulates within male networks or reinvests into personal development, further widening the resource gap over time. Cultural production begins to reflect the new reality. Movies, television, music, and literature slowly incorporate themes of male autonomy and female consequence. Independent creators lead the way with stories that resonate authentically rather than adhering to outdated tropes. Mainstream media lags, still cycling through narratives blaming men for societal issues, but audience reception grows increasingly skeptical. Viewers recognize propaganda when it conflicts with lived experience. Alternative media fills the void with content that validates the walking away choice without apology. Political implications simmer beneath the surface. Voting patterns shift as single men, a growing demographic, prioritize policies around economic freedom, tax reduction, individual rights, and reduce government intervention in personal lives. Issues traditionally leveraged to mobilize female voters face less automatic male opposition when family formation incentives lose appeal. Politicians scramble to understand the disengaged male bloc, proposing everything from housing reforms to relationship incentives. But solutions feel superficial without addressing core grievances around fairness and reciprocity. Spiritual and philosophical explorations gain traction among men seeking deeper meaning beyond traditional roles. Ancient texts on Stoicism, Eastern philosophies emphasizing detachment, and modern interpretations of purpose driven living find eager audiences. Men gather in groups to discuss virtue, resilience, legacy through impact rather than progeny, and the ethics of self prioritization in an unbalanced world. These pursuits provide frameworks that justify and elevate the choice to walk away, transforming it from mere avoidance into intentional living. As January 2026 progresses, the cumulative weight of these individual stories forms an unmistakable pattern. Men who once served as the backbone of relational investment have redirected their considerable strengths inward and toward chosen networks. Women who declared independence now confront its full scope without the previous subsidies. Society, built on assumptions of male provision and female selectivity, creaks under the strain of changed incentives. The path forward remains uncertain, hinging on whether cultural evolution can restore balance through mutual respect and genuine partnership. Until then, the walking away continues, one empowered choice at a time, reshaping everything from daily routines to demographic destinies. The evolution of this societal transformation reveals itself most pointably in the shifting aspirations of younger generations who have grown up witnessing the fallout from previous relational models. Boys entering their teenage years in 2026 absorb lessons not from abstract ideals, but from the lived examples of fathers, uncles, older brothers, and online mentors who emphasize self mastery over external validation. Schools that once subtly reinforced narratives of male responsibility toward partnership now contend with students who question why they should prepare for roles that statistics and stories suggest carry disproportionate risk. Career counseling sessions increasingly feature young men mapping paths toward financial independence by their mid 20s, with explicit goals of debt elimination, asset accumulation, and lifestyle design that does not hinge on dual income necessities. These aspirations reflect a profound cultural transmission where the pain and wisdom of one generation actively shape the choices of the next. No longer do young men enter adulthood assuming that finding a wife and starting a family represents the pinnacle of success. Instead, they view robust health, unassailable finances, deep friendships, and personal freedom as the new markers of a life well lived. This redefinition cascades through peer groups, reinforcing norms where boasting about relationship status gives way to sharing progress on gym personal records, investment returns, or entrepreneurial milestones. Girls navigating the same developmental stage encounter a more confusing landscape. The messaging they receive remains mixed, with remnants of empowerment rhetoric clashing against emerging warnings from older women about the practical limits of solo navigation. Teachers and media figures still celebrate female independence as the ultimate goal. Yet social circles buzz with hushed conversations about the shrinking pool of eligible men and the heightened competition for those who remain open to commitment. Young women observe their early 20s counterparts struggling with dating apps that yield superficial interactions at best, and they hear stories of aunts or cousins facing unexpected solitude after prioritizing education and career. This dissonance creates anxiety about future options, prompting some to reconsider timelines for partnership and family earlier than previous generations did. Others double down on the independence path, hoping that exceptional achievement will attract the kind of partner willing to invest meaningfully. But the underlying current pulls toward adaptation as reality intrudes on ideology faster than institutions can update their curricula. Higher education reflects these generational shifts in enrollment patterns and campus culture. Male attendance at traditional 4 year universities continues to decline in favor of trade schools, coding boot camps, online certifications, and direct entry into entrepreneurial ventures. The calculus is straightforward. Why accumulate large debt for degrees leading to jobs that might later subsidize unbalanced partnerships when faster, cheaper routes to financial security exist? Campuses that once buzzed with social scenes centered around dating now report quieter weekends, fewer mixed gender events drawing male participation, and a rise in single gender clubs focused on professional development or fitness. Fraternities pivot toward networking and skill building rather than party culture. Female students express frustration at the changed atmosphere, describing difficulty in forming organic connections where men once initiated more readily. Administrators scramble with retention strategies, offering scholarships and programs tailored to male interests, but the broader cultural pull proves stronger than institutional incentives. Professional environments absorb these graduates with differing expectations. Young men enter workplaces prioritizing clear advancement paths, mentorship opportunities, and compensation packages that support independent lifestyles. They negotiate remote work aggressively, valuing flexibility for personal pursuits over office visibility. Team dynamics shift as male employees focus intently on tasks without the previous layer of social maneuvering tied to relationship prospects. Women in parallel roles navigate similar career demands while contending with heightened awareness of fertility windows and partnership scarcity. Conversations in break rooms or after work gatherings reveal diverging priorities, men discussing investment strategies, travel plans, or side hustles, women often circling back to dating challenges and long term life planning. The subtle segregation of interests reinforces parallel rather than intertwined paths. Real estate markets provide a fascinating lens on these changes. Single men increasingly purchase properties tailored to individual or small group living, compact high quality condos in urban centers, rural acreage for self sufficiency projects, or investment properties generating passive income. Mortgage lenders note rising applications from unmarried men in their late 20s and early 30s, often with substantial down payments accumulated through focused saving. Developers respond with housing designs emphasizing home gyms, office spaces, and low maintenance features suited to solo occupancy. Women face steeper barriers to similar purchases, with single incomes stretched thinner by living costs and fewer opportunities for shared equity buildup. Rental markets in desirable areas see intense competition among single female professionals, driving prices higher and prompting relocations to less expensive regions. The geographic sorting accelerates, with men gravitating toward areas offering strong job markets and male friendly social scenes, while women cluster in traditional urban hubs that now feel the strain of imbalanced demographics. Financial services adapt rapidly to the new male consumer. Investment platforms report surges in accounts opened by men under 40, with portfolios skewed toward growth assets and diversification strategies aimed at long term independence. Retirement planning shifts from couple based projections to individual scenarios, emphasizing early financial freedom. Insurance products marketed towards single men gain traction, covering health, disability, and asset protection without family riders. Crypto and alternative investments find receptive audiences among men seeking hedges against systemic risks and inflation, aligning with the broader theme of self reliance. Banking apps introduce features for goal tracking that resonate with solo lifestyles. Emergency funds, travel savings, hobby budgets. Women utilize similar tools, but often with different goals, building safety nets against economic uncertainty in a landscape where partnership no longer serves as a default buffer. Health and wellness industries thrive on the male redirection of energy. Supplement companies, fitness apps, meal prep services, and recovery modalities market aggressively to men investing heavily in physical optimization. Sleep tracking, hormone testing, and longevity protocols become mainstream conversations in male circles. Mental health platforms see men engaging proactively with tools for stress management and mindset training rather than crisis intervention. The cumulative effect is a generation of men entering middle age in peak condition, with vitality and resilience that previous cohorts lacked due to relationship stress and provider burnout. Women pursue wellness with equal determination, but often frame it around balancing multiple roles or preparing for potential solo parenting, adding layers of complexity to their regimens. Travel and leisure sectors experience parallel booms. Men book solo or small group adventures in record numbers, backpacking through Asia, safari expeditions, skill based retreats in remote locations. Airlines and tour operators note increased male bookings for experiences, emphasizing challenge and camaraderie over romance. Adventure sports like rock climbing, surfing camps, and overland journeys build communities where lasting bonds form without romantic complications. Women travel extensively as well, but group dynamics shift toward female only tours or family oriented trips, reflecting the changed social landscape. Hospitality venues in popular destinations adjust offerings, with bars and clubs seeing quieter nights as men opt for earlier evenings, supporting fitness goals or productive mornings. Creative expression flourishes in this environment. Men channel newfound time and resources into music, writing, filmmaking, and visual arts that reflect their experiences and aspirations. Podcasts exploring male psychology, philosophy, and practical living dominate charts. Books on financial independence, stoic principles, and purposeful solitude become bestsellers. Independent films portray nuanced stories of men choosing autonomy over convention, resonating deeply with audiences. Female creators respond with works examining isolation, regret, and adaptation, creating a rich dialogue through art that raw social media discourse cannot match. Cultural output becomes a battleground for narrative control, with authenticity winning over propaganda. Community building takes new forms outside traditional structures. Men form intentional living arrangement, shared houses optimized for productivity and mutual support, co-working compounds with integrated fitness facilities, rural compounds focused on self-sufficiency skills. These setups prioritize brotherhood, accountability, and resource sharing without romantic entanglements. Religious congregations that adapt by emphasizing male spiritual growth see attendance rebounds, while those clinging to family centric messaging struggle. Secular meetups around common interests multiply. Philosophy discussion groups, investment clubs, martial arts dojos, maker spaces. Women build parallel networks emphasizing solidarity and practical support, but scale remains challenged by the absence of male resources traditionally bolstering such efforts. Parenting evolves dramatically as fewer men choose fatherhood within conventional frameworks. Those who do become fathers increasingly do so later after securing substantial personal stability and often with carefully vetted partners demonstrating clear reciprocity. Co parenting arrangements outside marriage gain popularity among men wary of legal risks. Sperm donation requests from single women rise, but male donors grow more selective, aware of potential future obligations. Adoption by single men increases slowly as systems accommodate non traditional applicants. The overall decline in children born into stable two parent households accelerates demographic shifts already underway, prompting policy debates about incentives and supports. Legal professions feel the impact through reduced demand in certain areas. Divorce attorneys report fewer male clients initiating proceedings simply because fewer men enter marriages vulnerable to asset division. Prenuptial agreements become standard among the minority who do marry, reflecting learned caution. Family law practices pivot toward representing women in child support claims against reluctant fathers or navigating complex fertility arrangements. Contract lawyers draft innovative cohabitation agreements for couples avoiding marriage entirely. The legal landscape recalibrates around diminished expectations of lifelong male provision. Media consumption patterns solidify the divide. Men gravitate toward content creators speaking directly to their realities: financial educators, fitness experts, philosophers, comedians addressing gender dynamics without censorship. Mainstream entertainment loses male viewership when narratives portray men as perpetual villains or incompetent foils. Women consume mixed media, with growing interest in content promising solutions to dating scarcity or validating independent struggles. Streaming platforms algorithmically separate audiences, reinforcing worldview silos that make cross gender understanding rarer. Global perspectives highlight Western exceptionalism in this trend. Men in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and parts of Asia report continued willingness to invest in relationships where cultural norms still emphasize mutual roles and family priority. Western men traveling or relocating discover these differences firsthand, often extending stays or building lives abroad. Immigration patterns shift subtly as men seek environments aligning better with partnership desires. Women in those regions observe incoming Western men with curiosity and caution, aware of the cultural baggage they carry. As January 2026 gives way to spring, the cumulative momentum of individual choices solidifies into structural change. Economies adjust to consumer bases with different spending priorities. Governments grapple with tax revenue projections based on outdated family models. Educational systems reform to attract male participation. Cultural institutions reflect evolving values through art and discourse. The walking away that began as personal decisions has become a civilization scale reorientation where men reclaimed agency over their time, resources, and purpose. Women navigate the world. Their collective messaging helps create, adapting where possible, struggling where adaptation lags. Society stands at a crossroads with potential paths toward renewed balance through honest reciprocity or further divergence into parallel existences. The choices made in coming years will determine which future emerges, but the old paradigm of unreciprocated male servitude has ended irrevocably. Men figured out the game, refused to play on unfair terms, and built new games entirely. The world transforms accordingly, one awakened man at a time. The culmination of this grand societal shift brings us to a point where the full scope of consequences becomes impossible to dismiss, even for those who once championed the narratives that set it in motion. As we move deeper into 2026, the evidence accumulates across every measurable domain: economic indicators, health statistics, demographic projections, cultural outputs, and personal testimonies all point to the same irreversible reality. Men, having internalized the clear message that their traditional roles as providers and protectors were no longer valued or required, responded with a collective withdrawal that has reshaped the interpersonal landscape permanently. This is not a phase, not a trend that will reverse with a few public relations campaigns or economic upticks. It is a fundamental reallocation of male energy, time, and resources towards self defined purposes that has gained critical mass and self sustaining momentum. The men who walked away did so after careful consideration, after weighing risks against rewards, after observing patterns repeated across personal lives and public discourse. They chose peace over performance, autonomy over obligation, and self respect over servitude. And in making that choice en masse, they have forced society to confront the full implications of a world where male investment in traditional relationships is optional rather than expected. Consider the long term economic ramifications that are only now beginning to crystallize in policy discussions and corporate boardrooms. Economies built on the assumption of steady family formation, with men as primary earners supporting households that consume goods and services at predictable rates, now face structural challenges. Consumer spending patterns shift as single men allocate disposable income toward personal development, travel, technology, fitness, and investments rather than family oriented purchases like larger homes, minivans, or child related expenses. Retail sectors tied to wedding industries, family vacations, and household expansion contract noticeably, while industries catering to male self improvement expand rapidly. Financial planners report a surge in male clients planning for early retirement without factoring in spousal or child support, redirecting compound interest toward decades of freedom rather than decades of provision. Governments projecting tax revenue from growing populations adjust forecasts downward, confronting the reality that low birth rates driven by male opt out will shrink the future workforce and strain pension systems already teetering on unsustainability. The economic engine that relied on male sacrifice to fuel family units now runs on a different fuel: individual male productivity channeled into self sustaining cycles. Healthcare systems absorb the downstream effects with particular clarity. Emergency rooms and primary care offices see fewer men presenting with stress related conditions tied to relationship conflict, financial overextension for family support, or burnout from provider roles. Instead, men appear proactively for optimization checkups, hormone panels, preventive screenings, and performance enhancing consultations. Mental health providers note a dramatic drop in male clients seeking help for partnership issues, replaced by goal oriented therapy focused on ambition realization and boundary reinforcement, while the overall health profile of single men improves markedly, with lower rates of obesity, hypertension, substance abuse linked to relational despair, and suicide tied to divorce outcomes. Women navigating increased solitary responsibility show rising utilization of healthcare resources for anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, and stress related physical conditions. Fertility clinics expand services aggressively to meet demand from single women and same sex couples, while traditional obstetric practices prepare for fewer births overall. Pharmaceutical companies adjust research priorities toward longevity and individual wellness rather than family health maintenance. Urban planning and infrastructure development reflect the new demographic realities in tangible ways. City planners who once designed neighborhoods around family friendly amenities like parks, schools, and spacious housing now contend with demand for compact, high amenity dwellings suited to single or small group occupancy. Developments featuring shared workout facilities, co working spaces, concierge services, and secure access appeal directly to independent men building lives without domestic obligations. Public transportation systems optimize for commuter patterns less tied to school drop offs or family errands. Entertainment districts shift toward venues offering experiences aligned with male interests, sports viewing, craft brewing, live music, comedy focused on adult themes. Family oriented attractions struggle with declining attendance as fewer couples form and fewer children are born into stable units. Tourism boards market destinations differently, emphasizing adventure and cultural immersion over romantic getaways. Political landscapes evolve in response to the growing block of disengaged men whose priorities center on individual liberty, economic freedom, and reduced governmental overreach. Election cycles reveal voting patterns where single men support candidates promising lower taxes, deregulation, strong border policies, and protection of personal assets over expanded social programs historically tied to family support. Issues like no fault divorce reform, default shared custody, and elimination of permanent alimony gain traction in legislatures as male constituents mobilize around lived grievances. Women's voting blocs fragment between those maintaining traditional progressive alignments and those beginning to question policies that may have contributed to partnership scarcity. Third party movements emerge advocating for gender neutral family policies, mutual obligation frameworks, and cultural restoration of reciprocity. The political center of gravity shifts incrementally toward individual rights over collective family assumptions. International relations feel subtle ripples as Western male disengagement influences soft power projection. Countries that once exported cultural narratives of female empowerment now confront domestic backlash that weakens their moral authority on gender issues abroad. Nations with more traditional gender dynamics market themselves implicitly as alternatives, attracting Western men seeking balanced interpersonal environments. Migration patterns adjust as skilled male workers relocate to jurisdictions offering better alignment between effort and relationship outcomes. Global demographic conferences grapple with Western decline, contrasted against stability or growth in regions maintaining mutual gender expectations. Think tanks model scenarios where continued Western trends lead to relative economic and cultural eclipse by societies that preserve incentives for family formation. Technological innovation accelerates in directions shaped by male priorities. Research and development in fields like artificial intelligence companions, virtual reality experiences, advanced robotics for household tasks, and biohacking for extended vitality receive disproportionate investment from newly independent male wealth. Startups founded by men walking away proliferate in sectors promising enhanced personal autonomy, remote work tools, decentralized finance, personal security systems, health monitoring devices. The innovation pipeline shifts away from family centric technologies toward individual empowerment solutions. Patent filings reflect this reorientation, with surges in categories related to solitary living optimization and male specific health advancement. Educational reform movements gain momentum as institutions recognize the need to re engage male participation. Curricula emphasizing practical skills, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, physical development, and critical thinking draw stronger male interest than traditional liberal arts paths perceived as ideologically hostile. Trade schools and apprenticeship programs expand capacity to meet demand from young men seeking direct routes to self sufficiency. Online learning platforms dominate male education consumption, offering flexible, outcome focused courses unburdened by campus social politics. Mentorship programs pairing successful independent men with younger counterparts multiply, transmitting values of self reliance and strategic life design across generations. Spiritual and philosophical movements experience renaissance among men seeking meaning beyond traditional provider roles. Modern stoicism, rational optimism, and purpose driven individualism attract devoted followings through books, retreats, and online communities. Ancient wisdom traditions repackaged for contemporary application find eager audiences ready to build inner citadels impervious to external chaos. Religious denominations that adapt messaging toward male spiritual leadership and personal covenant with higher purpose see membership growth, while those clinging to family as primary vocation narratives decline further. Meditation centers, silence retreats, and vision quests become regular practices for men cultivating internal peace that no external relationship can disrupt or enhance. Artistic expression reaches new heights of authenticity as creators speak directly to lived experience without fear of cancellation. Literature, exploring male awakening, autonomy journeys, and societal recalibration, becomes mainstream through independent publishing success. Music genres emphasizing resilience, brotherhood, and self mastery dominate male playlists and live performances. Visual arts depict themes of liberation from expectation, solitary strength, and redefinition of legacy. Theater and performance pieces challenge old tropes, presenting nuanced portrayals of men choosing peace over participation. The cultural canon expands to include voices long marginalized in mainstream discourse, enriching collective understanding through unfiltered perspective. Personal testimonies compile into an overwhelming body of evidence supporting the walking away choice. Men from every walk of life share stories of transformation. The tradesman who paid off his house in record time, the professional who traveled to 30 countries by 40, the entrepreneur who built generational wealth without family dilution, the artist who finally created without compromise. Common threads weave through these accounts: profound peace, abundant energy, financial security, deep brotherhood, purposeful days. Regrets focus not on relationships abandoned, but on years spent chasing validation through provision. Women's testimonies reveal parallel evolution. Some adapt successfully through genuine reciprocity and mutual respect, finding partners among the minority still open. Others process grief over lost assumptions, redirecting toward community building, career mastery, or alternative family structures. A few maintain defiance, but their numbers shrink as reality asserts itself. The marketplace of ideas sorts itself ruthlessly. Narratives blaming men exclusively for societal challenges lose credibility against mounting counter evidence of rational choice. Explanations rooted in mutual incentive structures gain acceptance even in previously hostile spaces. Public intellectuals acknowledging the logical progression from cultural messaging to male response earn broader audiences. Debate shifts from whether the shift occurred to how society adapts constructively. Proposals emerge for cultural renewal based on reciprocal partnership, clear expectations, and mutual benefit rather than entitlement. And as the script draws toward its close, the overarching story resolves into clarity. Men finally discerned the underlying dynamic that significant portions of modern Western women viewed them primarily as resources rather than partners, servants rather than equals. Presented with declarations of independence and non need, men accepted the premise at face value and withdrew their investment. No longer willing to serve under the guise of love, they built lives of abundance on their own terms. Women, having traded direct male support for indirect state and corporate structures, now confront the limitations of that exchange as economic pressures mount and male fallback evaporates. The state strains under expanded obligations it cannot sustainably meet. Society recalibrates around new incentives with outcomes flowing logically from premises long broadcast. This is not tragedy, but consequence, not punishment, but alignment, not disappearance, but reallocation. The good men did not vanish, they simply stopped serving without partnership. They thrive in gyms, workshops, investment accounts, adventure trails, creative studios, brotherhood circles. They build, grow, explore, optimize. Free from unreciprocated expectation, they embody potential realized. The world adjusts, sometimes painfully, sometimes gracefully, to the reality they created through millions of individual assertions of agency. Future historians will mark this era as the great rebalancing when one gender's collective choice forced reckoning with decades of unbalanced dynamics. Whether society evolves toward renewed mutual partnership or settles into parallel prosperity remains open. What closes irrevocably is the era of male servitude disguised as love. Men figured it out, internalized the lesson, and walked away. In doing so, they reclaimed their time, their energy, their purpose, their peace. And in that reclamation, they redefined what it means to live fully in the modern world. What did you think about what was discussed here today? Do you agree with the observations or do you see it differently? Leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts because I read them all and it helps drive the conversation forward. Like the video if you like it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.